Hey YouTube, it's Jayce. This week's topic is children, and if you want children, how are you going to go about doing that? This is often a big topic for trans people, specifically trans people, obviously, who want to have children, because in most cases, trans people cannot uh, or do not prefer to have children the normal way. And so you have to start talking about surrogacy and adoption and insemination and stuff like that. Um, so before we get into those three things and talk about those first, this is always obviously something that you need to discuss with your significant other. First, if you want to have kids, you need to discuss that. Second, you need to discuss how you want to go about that, and like the negatives and positives surrounding those things. But yeah, that was kind of a side note. But yeah, before we get into that, I want to touch on a few things. I know that after a while, being on T will have a negative impact on, like, I guess the functionalness, if that's a word, functionality of your eggs. So you may not be able to either save your eggs if you want to, or apparently there's this they're working on uh, having it where I guess the egg kind of replaces the sperm. Apparently, there was a case in California where a kid was born via two moms. I don't know how that happened. I'm not really sure. I haven't really researched it, but I heard about it. So there's that. So if you're considering any options that are using your eggs, it's probably a good idea to look into how the tea is affecting your eggs and the functionality of your eggs. And then also something that I've thought about is my surgeries, so bottom surgery and hysterectomy, which both I plan to get, and how those can have an effect on. Obviously, if you have a hysterectomy, you're removing all your biological, all that stuff down there. So if you plan on having a baby naturally, or if you plan on saving your eggs or using your eggs or whatever, that's something that obviously needs to happen before a hysterectomy, and probably before bottom surgery as well. So that's something to consider. So I've talked with my significant other. We've talked about kids. We both want to have kids, and we've talked a little bit about each of the options. But we're not really getting deep into the options right now because we're not even close to having kids yet. Because that's like somewhere in the future, and who knows, we may not even be together. But it's something that I've definitely discussed with her, just kind of briefly. But yeah, we have talked about either saving my eggs or like seeing what the other options are by the time we get around to having kids. We haven't really discussed, like, we talked about surrogacy, but that's not really an option for us, because it's just we don't want that. We'd either adopt or do artificial insemination. So some good things about adoption. I actually really don't know the actual costs of things or anything, but I think adoption is good. It helps out kids who don't have a home, and I think that's really good. However, adoption is really extensive and really it's like an extreme process. And sometimes you're in line for a child, and then you don't end up getting that child, and then do you want the adoption to be open or closed? And there can be a lot of problems that come from that. I'm adopted myself, And fortunately, I don't think my mom's run into any problems, but she said that the process was a really long process for her. So that's a negative side to adoption. And then artificial insemination. So obviously, there's going to be. Okay, so there's negatives to every one of these options. The kid will not be a biological kid of both parents at the same time. So that's obviously a negative downfall. But a positive side to insemination is at least one person will be the biological parent of the child, which in my case would be Naomi, my girlfriend. So, well, like, if we got married and decided to have kids, whatever. So that's a plus. I believe artificial insemination, again, is probably expensive and it probably is an extensive process. But it is what it is. So, yeah. So we kind of also discussed the age that we want to have kids if we are still together at that time, and Naomi kind of wants kids around the age of like 28, I guess, like 28, 29, 30. So again, looking at that and looking at where I am now, and how, like, I feel like even though that's like 10 years, I feel like that's like not enough time for all the stuff that needs to be done, in the order of stuff needs to happen in terms of just costs and stuff like that. So I don't know how that's gonna play out. We also touched on a little bit like how, like, what if you have children? Do you plan on telling them? Like, do I plan on telling them that I'm trans? And I definitely do, because I'm not ashamed of who I am. I think it's necessary, and I think it'll help my children have like a more open mind, I guess, on LGBTQ issues, knowing that their dad is transgender. So definitely plan on telling them. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I plan on having kids someday in the future, whether that's through adoption or artificial insemination, or my wife. And if there's some possibility that the child can be mine and my wife's at the same time, and then I'll go for it. It'll probably be extremely expensive though, so I don't know. We'll have to see. But yeah, that's where I'm at right now. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So I will see you guys next Tuesday. All right, guys. Bye.